Okay. Go ahead, Chaim.
Thank you for the shower.
So another thing, is Shabbat no, yeah.
Okay, so let's see where we are with him. We are up to
Yesterday, but she's gonna go back.
okay, so do you remember where I'm gonna go back to?
But it's a little bit different.
I just want to make sure that today's daf is Lamed Hey, right? Not Lamed Vav. No, I'm sorry. Today's Lamed Vav. Okay. Right, so we're gonna go back to here. So Zok to Gemara. We're gonna go back to Lamed Hey and Beis, and we're gonna go back to Amar Abzer. Pa'amim Shabayim. Sometimes the Bailim is gonna end up paying the Soicher. Amar Abzer Pa'amim Shabayim Mishalmin Kama Parois LaSoicher. The Bailim could end up paying multiple parois to the Soicher. Hechadam. What would be the case? Agraminei Meyayim. So a Soicher rented an animal for 100 days. Then the person who owned the animal asked the person who rented it for 100 days, can I borrow it back for 90 days? And then the guy who rented it needed it back. So then the renter rented it back from the person who he lent it to for 80 days. And then once again, the owner borrowed it back for 70 days. And Tosfos speaks out the reason why they had to rent it back or lend it back for a lesser amount than the one before. It says then they would just, each transaction would in fact cancel each other out. So if I rented something for 100 days and then lent it back to you for 100 days, it just cancels out the schiras and vice versa. So that's why each period, whether it's schiras or sheila, was a little bit less time than the period before. It died while it was by the second sheil. Imagine that it's not the same person. If each person here was a separate person, each sheil would be chayiv to the person who we borrowed from. In this case, a seicher would be chayiv to pay back a full par. So mali that it's the same person. For each she'ela, even though he's the owner of the animal, he has to give back to this seicher a full par. So you have over here a case where the owner of the animal is paying the renter 2 paras. Amalei of Achmi Difti Lurvina. It's not mamish 2 paras because the seicher is still going to. The seicher doesn't have to return anything. That's right. It's mamish 2 paras. Amalei of Achmi Difti Lurvina. Michti. I don't understand how you could say that. Chada pari. We're all talking about the same par. I love Afka. Afka is schiras, leave schiras for Ayla l'sheila, and then Afka misheila Ayla schiras. So let it just go back. Let the final shoyl pay with cash since the animal died. Pay with cash his seicher. The seicher will give it back to the shoyl will give it back to the seicher, and then the seicher give him back to the original shoyl. Amalei, that wouldn't work. Why? Umi isa lepara be'ina the name of lehachi. If the actual par was still here, in fact, it would go back and forth through the same channels, following its own path back to the original owner. But now that it's not here, and it's just a chiyuv tashlumin, you can't say that chiyuv tashlumin goes back and forth, and therefore you have to pay. The shoyel has to pay twice, and the seicher pays no times because it is a onus. Here's a third approach. There's only going to be 2 stars that are going to work here. Chada de Sheila, the Chada de Schiras. There'll be one of Sheila and one of Schiras. Shum Sheila Achasi. Therefore, there'll be the Shoyal with the same payment could pay for both Sheilas. The Shum Schiras Achasi. And the Schiras is one. The Sheila Kani Lakamri. The Sheila animal, the Soicha will keep, because the shoyl has to pay him a full, and the schiras, the owner still has to give him an animal to complete his schiras. He'll be able to use for the period of the schiras, original schiras, which is 100 days. Then he'll give it back. So the shoyl will only have to pay 2, but out of the 2, one of them, the shoyl, who's also the original owner, will get back at the end of the schiras period. Amr Rabbi Yirmiyah, Zakr Rabbi Yirmiyah. Now we'll look at it from a different perspective. What we have over here is a soicher that then turned around and lent it to a shoyl. And they're each going to have to swear to the original Bailam that they don't have it. And what happened with it? Sometimes it will lead to them bringing a carbon chatos, and sometimes it will lead that they both bring a noshim. Now, when do you bring a chatos and when do you bring a noshim?
Can we talk now about the same person borrowing it?
Well, we're not talking about that anymore. Now we're talking about two different people.
Right.
The case we just spoke about was one person going back and forth. That's right. So, what is a chatos? What is a noshim? What is a noshim? If someone swears falsely, and he's benefiting from the fact that he swore falsely, meaning the fact that he swore will now pater him. That's called a shvuah of gzelas moment, and you bring in and if it turns out that you were lying, you bring in a sham gzelas. So one of the classic cases of an asham gzelas is if a shomer swears that he's pater. For instance, a shomer chinam who swears that it was an oinus or a gnev aveda, and it was really a pshia. And then it turns out that a shomer was wrong, he'll bring in asham gzelas. But what if he a person swears falsely? A person swears, this chair is really a pickle, right? That's called a shvuah shov or shvuah bitoy, and for that you bring a chatos and not an asha. So sometimes they'll both bring a chatos, sometimes they'll both bring an asha. Sometimes the soicher will bring a chatos because he didn't benefit from his false shvuah. But the shoyl who did benefit from his false shvuah will be chayav in asham. And and the cheshbon is quite simple. Okay, so how would that happen? If you swore falsely and you were denying that you owed money, and then it turns out that you were lying, you have to bring an asham gezelas. Bitus fasayim, if you make a false shvuah, but it doesn't impact your pocketbook, then you'll be chayav chatos. So pavim sheshneim b'chatos. What's the example? Going shemesa kedarka, which means it was an oines. V'amru nenta, and they said that it was nenta, which is also an oines. In either case, a shoyl would be chayiv and a soicher would be potter. So therefore, soicher the benkach or benkach mifter potter mifter. Regardless, the soicher is potter. It doesn't make a difference what type of oinus. A soicher is potter on an oinus. Potter, and a benkach with the potter. He'll only bring a chatos because even though he swore falsely, it wasn't a shvur that impacted his pocketbook. And shoyl the benkach chiyuv machayiv a shoyl who, regardless what type of oinus it is, whether it's mesa kedarka, whether it's tamanoinus, the shoyl is chayiv anyway. Therefore, bechatos, when he lied, it didn't impact his pocketbook. Therefore, he brings a chatos for a shvuas bita. Palmam sheshneim ba'asham. Sometimes they're both benefiting from the lie. It was nignava, which means meikar din, both the soicher and the shoyl would be chayiv. V'amru meisa machmas malacha, and they lied, and they said that it's meisa machmas malacha, which even a shoyl is potter for. They're both denying that they owe money with their shvuah, because they're both chayiv. Because what happened was a gneva v'aveda, which a soicher and a shoyl are chayiv for. Thank you very much. Vikapatri nafshayu, and they're pattering themselves. So therefore, they both bring an asha. When is a soicher b'chatos v'shoyl b'asham? When do you have the soicher bringing the chatos, meaning the soicher did not benefit? B'shoyl b'asham, but the shoyl brings an asham. It was mesa kedaka, which means the soicher would be potter with the truth, and the shoyl would be chayiv with the truth. V'amru mesa machmas malacha, and they both said mesa machmas malacha. Soicher the benkach mifter potter. The soicher who, even if he would have said the truth, and he would have said that it was mesa kedarka, which is an oinus, the soicher would have been potter, so he didn't benefit from his false shvuah. Therefore, he's chayiv b'chalas shvuas bitoy. But shoyl the mechayiv b'mesa kedarka, the kapotter nafshei, the mesa machamas malacha ba'asham. Okay, where do you have the opposite effect? Where it's soicher ba'asham B'shoyel b'chatos. It was really nignava, which would make a soicher chayiv. Well, I'm going to they said I wasn't honest. Soicher who the mechayiv v'gneva v'aveda v'kapotin av sheba meisa kedarka, he will bring an asham. But shoyel the benkach who benkach chayuv mechayiv, a shoyel doesn't make a difference if it was nignava or if it was meisa kedarka. Regardless, he would be chayiv. Therefore, his shvu was tamash shvu bitoy b'chatos. Correct, Gemara. Other than just confusing us with the different configurations, my kamash malon. What chiddush do we learn from this fact that you bring an asham for a shavua that saves you money, and you bring a chatas for a shavua spitui? So tuela fuke midar b'ami da amar kol shavua shada yodim mashpi noisa ein chayav nala mishum shavua spitui. You're not chayav a chatas for making a false shavua unless you made the shavua because you wanted to make your own shavua. But if it was a shavua that was induced by Bezdin, such as this shavua here, where the shomer has a chiyuv to make a shvua, he didn't on his own just pop out a shvua. There will not be a chiyuv of a chatos for a shvuas bitui. We see from our brisa, in fact, that you do bring a chatos for shvuas bitui, even if Bezdin made you make the shvua.
What's his
Shenemar oy nefesh kisi shava levatebis vasayim kisi shava me'atzma, because it says kisi shava, which means on your own, you just decided to make that shvua. That's when there'll be a chiyuv chatos, but mashmalon that we don't darshan it that way. The loiker of Abi, rather we will be mechayiv a shvua, even though it was Bezdin who demanded the shvua from both the shoyl and the sarfer here. Itmar. And now we're going to start off with a new sugya, which really segues from the last sugya, because here you have one shomer, meaning the soicher, turned around and lent it to a shoyl. Right, that's our Mishnah's case. So Zaktamar Itmar shomer shemasar l'shomer. What if one shomer who was charged with watching an animal or whatever object it was decides that he's subcontracting, he's giving it over to a different shomer? Rav Amar Potter. Rav holds you'll be Potter on whatever the original shomer would have been Potter on. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayiv, even if the original shomer would be Potter, you're going to be chayiv because of the mere fact that you gave it away to somebody else. Amar Rabbi l'taimei de Rav, according to Rav, who holds Potter, lemiboy shomer chinam shemasar l'shomer sacher the iluye ayel shmirasay. Even if a shomer chinam gave it to a shomer sacher, which upgrades the level of shmira, there for sure you're Potter. Elafilu shomer sacher shemasar l'shomer chinam the garei gayel shmirasay, where the shmur was downgraded from someone who only was mekabel a chiyuv for pshia, and now it's even chayiv for gneva v'aveda, Potter, you would still be Potter. My time, the Amrasar levendas, Rav just requires that the object is given over to a bendas. That shemer shemasar l'shomer is chayiv, l'miboy shomer sacher shemasar l'shomer chinam. It's pashut that if the original shomer was a shomer sacher, and he handed it out to somebody for free, the gerur gayel shmirasei, you might argue that he downgraded the shmira. Ela filu shemichinim shemasal shemisacher, the iluya ayel shmirasei, where the shmira was technically upgraded. There's even a chiyuv for gneva v'aveda chayiv. You'll be chayiv. The amarlei ein ritzoni shehei pigdoni bi'aracher. I wanted you to watch it. I didn't want anybody else to watch it. There's a hakpada from the original person who gave it to the first shomer that you should be the shomer and nobody else. And therefore, automatically, since you've made an unauthorized move by handing this off to somebody who the Bible did not want it handed to, therefore you're going to be chayav. I'm Rav Chisda. Hadar Rav. This is a law that Rav said shomer shamosh shemers. Potter lav b'ferish itmar. He didn't come right out and say that. Elam mechlala. What happened was there was a story. Rav Paskin, and from his psak by this story, we can see he holds that shomer from Moshe l'shomer is Potter. There were these gardeners. They used to always leave their kalim, their tools, at a certain old woman who washed it for them. One day, for some reason, the lady wasn't there, and therefore, what happened is one of the group accepted all of the tools from all his friends, and he was going to be the shomer on them this time. Shama Kala Behilula. He heard a chasna, and he couldn't hold himself back from going to this chasna. So he couldn't go to the chasna with a full trailer of gardening equipment. So Novak Ozo, he went out and he saw that the woman was home. Afkedinu legabo dahisapta, and he gave it to her to watch. By the time he finished the chasna, Ignoiv Marayu, the stuff was stolen from this woman.
He gave it to the regular show.
He gave it to the regular Shem. That's right. Also, the Kamei the Rab. So they took him to the entire Rab, and they said we gave it to him, and it got stolen by him. Upate and Rab said that he's put. Man the Chaza, anyone who saw this story and Rab Paskali that this Shomer is Potter, Savar Mishum Shomer Samoshal Shomer Potter. And that's how we would have seen a psak of Rab that old Shomer Samoshal Shomer is Potter. But Velohi, it would be a mistaken conclusion to have said that. Because Shiny Hosam, as Chaim pointed out, the only reason why over there it works is the Chalyoy Manami Inu Gufayu Kabo Dahi Safta Havimivkidlu. They can't say Ein Ritzoni, Shehei Pigdoni, Biyar Acher, which was Rabbi Yochanan's Taina, because you yourself give it to this woman every single day. So maybe in a standard case of Shomer Shemashal Shomer, maybe Rav would hold Chaim. And from this case alone, you don't have a raya, because they themselves approve of this woman as a shomer. Yosef Ravami bekamer lo hashmaitze. Ravami said over this shaila of Rabbi Yochanan and his Rebbe, where Rabbi Yochanan says shomer shemosh lo shomer is chayiv, and they say Rabbi Abba bar Mamal or Rabbi. So Rabbi Abba bar Mamal asked the kasha from our Mishnah. Hasoich par mechaveroi veheshil lacher umay sekedarka. What does our Mishnah say? Yishava shoicher shemay sekedarka. Vashoyel mishalim l'soicher. Pray to Gemara of him Isa v'holek Rabbi Yochanan that shomer shemosar l'shomer is chayiv lei malei. Let the original Bible say ein ritzoni sheyehei pigdoni b'yad acher, and regardless the soicher should be chayiv. To the original Bible, like Rabbi Yosy says. On malei he answered hacha b'may askinon v'shenos naloi lahashel. The Bible that rented this device, this item, to the soicher, gave him permission to rent it out. If the Bailam say to the Soicher, I give you permission to rent it out, that really means that if the Soicher rents it out, he's renting it out now on the instructions on behalf of the original owner. So surely the relationship with the Shoyel is directly with the owner, and surely he shouldn't pay the Soicher, he should pay the owner. The Shoyel, the original owner, didn't tell the Soicher, go lend it out. He just said, whatever you want to do with it, you could do with it. But don't get me involved. You just have permission to do it. As Rashi says, if you want to lend it out for the period of time that you're renting it from me, we're not makpid. But we're not telling you, we're not instructing you to lend it out. It's the Seicher that lend it out. He is the Baal Dabar between him and the Seicher, between him and the Shoyel. The Bailam still can't say because they did say l'daitach. So it's sort of hybrid. It's enough that it neutralizes the Mitzoni, but it's not their shayla.
They didn't charge for additional driving.
That's right. Masav, I was thinking the same thing. Masav Rami Bachama. What if you gave money to your chaver to watch on your behalf? And he put it over his back. And he gave it over to watch to his minor children. And they did not watch it properly. So there was a pshi over here. Chayiv, they're going to be chayiv. Why? Because these people who he gave it over to didn't do a proper shmira. So there's a chayiv because they didn't watch it properly. So let's be medayik.
Separate story.
The only reason why.
Everything is a separate
I
story.
mean, it's not vino, it's oino. Okay, so time with the ketanim. The whole problem was because it was masron livnoi ulevitoi haketanim hagadolim. What if he gave him over to adult children? It would be potter. So you have a right that shomer shemashal shomer is potter. Amai name alone ain't trying shape it going to be alacher. Amarava giving it to family is different. It's kol mafkid. Any person who gives something to his friend to watch on his behalf, by default, he is specifically allowing the family to be involved. You He knows that the shomer is not going to be there standing 24/7 watching it. He'll rely on his family to assist. And therefore, you don't say this svar of Ein Ritzoni Shebekdoni when it comes to family. Amin Ardoi, they could not be. And then actually, regardless of this kasha, it makes sense that you could lend it to family. The Katani, Oisha Mosron, Livnoi Uvita Aktanim Chayiv. So you could make a dig from here. Halavnoi Uvita Akdoilim would be potter. That's Benoy Ubitoi Hagdoilim. Michalal de Lacherim. Any other person, if he gave it over to, Loish Nagadoilim, but Loish Nagtanim, it will be Chayiv. The imkain, if you're not going to say that, it should have said, it should have just said, if you are a shomer and you gave it over to a katan, you're chayiv. Masha, any gadol you give it to is potter. It doesn't say that. It says if you give it to your katan, you're chayiv. Masha, that your gadol is potter, but a third party gadol that's not related to you, not part of your family, would be usher. So you have a sort of a raya to Rabbi Yochanan that shomer shemasar l'shomer is chayiv. And Tosfos asks, so you should have a raya against Rav. So Tosfos says no. Maybe you could say that Banav is Larvusa for something else. You don't have a raya that someone else's child would be chayiv automatically. Shemamina. Amar Rava. Hilchos. So what's halacha l'maisa? Shomer shemasar l'shomer chayiv. Lemiboy sher b'sachar shemasar l'sher mechinam. The geruye gadol l'shmira. Sorry. Elafilu sher mechinam shemasar l'shomer sachar. Where you've upgraded the level of shmira, you're still going to be chayiv. Like Rabbi Yochanan said, my timer, not for Rabbi Yochanan's reason. There's a third. I disagree with Ein Ritzoni. A person is not mocked with it. You should give your pekat to somebody else, but it's a different svar. The Amr Lay, what's going to happen if a peril happens to it, and you end up losing the animal? What happens is the shomer ends up having to swear to the bailam. He has to for sure swear, like Rav Huna said earlier, that Eini B'Shusi. And if he's patting himself, he has to swear that it was an incident that he's not mechuyev for. Like if it's a shomer chinam, he's swearing that there was a gneva v'aveda. And the Bailam could say, "At mehemnesli b'shavua, heichlei mehemli b'shavua." I give it to you as a shomer because I trust you, but I don't trust him, and therefore you had no right to give it. Itmar, what would be if pashaba v'yotzos la'agam? The shomer was pasheya and allowed the animal to go out to the agam. In the agam, what will happen? It can get stolen. In the agam, the danger is that it can get stolen. It's not properly watched. And what happened in the agam? Umeisakadarka, which is an oinus. So it was a tchilasa b'pshia, but the pshia was lagabi gneva, and that's not what happened at the end. At the end, it was a seiva b'oinus from something totally different. Abai mishmei Rabba Amar Chayiv, the shomer is chayiv. Rabba mishmei Rabba Amar Potter. Abai mishmei Rabba Amar Chayiv, and he was so sure about his psak that he commented, "Kol dayana the loidoin kihaydina." Anyone who doesn't pass like me, that it will be chayiv lav dayanahu. It's not. He's not a dayan. Because let me boil on the Amar tchilas b'pshia v'seiva b'oinus chayiv the chayiv. Even in the case of tchilas b'pshia v'seiva b'oinus, if you all that's chayiv, for sure it's chayiv here. Elafilu l'mandamar Potter, even if in a classic case of tchilas b'pshia v'seiva b'oinus, you would say it's Potter. Hacha here would be chayiv. My timer, the amrinon havla the agmakotla. Here we don't say it was stam an oinus. It was an oinus that would never have occurred had a tchilas b'pshia v'seiva b'oinus is an oinus that could have occurred anyway. But here, this oinus would for sure not have occurred anywhere else. Why? Because maybe the stale air that's in the agam killed it. So maybe you're a cause of the death of the animal. Rabba Mishmei Rabba Amar Potter with the same level of confidence. Called Dayanit Ladan Ki Aidina Lav Dayanahu. Lemabayim Adamar Tchilas B'Shiv Saifa is Potter. The Potter. Elafilam Adamar Chayiv Hacha Potter. Why? By time of Darminon we say Malach Hamavas Mali Hacha Umali Has. Since it happened with the oinus, if it was supposed to die, no matter where it was, it would have died. Now we really have to explain what is the case of Tchilas B'Pshia v'Seifa B'Oinus. So the halacha is the only way to properly watch money, as in cash, is to bury it under the ground. What if, and that protects it both from it being stolen as well as from it being caught in a fire. What if we put it into a wooden chicken coop, where the chances of it getting stolen are very low because no one's looking in a chicken coop for money. So it has the same level of shmira regarding a geneva. But lagabe a fire, it could be damaged in a fire. Unlike if it was buried, it wouldn't perish in a fire. So it's chilase b'pshia, meaning he put it in the tree for the urvani in a wooden place where it was a pisheya lagabi fire, and they got stolen. So that's the case of chilase b'pshia v'seifa b'ayis. And the Rava says even if that's going to be chayiv, that's because lemaisa the ganav went there. So Klor, he wouldn't have stolen the animal. He wouldn't have been able to steal this money if you didn't put it in the chicken coop, because that's where he looked. So Lamaisa, that's what was stolen. But over here, you'll say Malach Hamavis Mali Hacha Mali Hasim. Unlike a Ganev, which looked in the tree for the Urvani, so it only got stolen because you put it there. The Malach Hamavis would have found it no matter where you put it, and therefore you should be. Umoida Abaye, the Hadra Leveimara Umesa, if you returned it into the house of the Bailam, and then an onions happened, there will be potter, my timer, the Hadra. It was already placed back into the owner's Rishus, the Agna Kotla, because it's no longer in the Agam. Moidi Rava, if it didn't die machmas the air, but Aganim stole it from the Agam, and then Umeisa Kedarka, and then it died afterwards. Beganav, the Chayiv. There you'll be Chayiv, my timer, the Ishavka, even if the Malach HaMavis would not have killed the animal, the Ishavka Malach HaMavis, even if the Malach HaMavis would not have killed the animal, Bevesei de Gamva have a kind. It would have ended up being in the house of the Ganav. So therefore, it still wouldn't be returned to the Bible. Okay, we're going to stop here because it's already 6:53, and with Hashem, we will be mamshech tomorrow. I apologize that I came so late.
If the fact is that the Havla is nicht